We now move on, and a spokesperson for the Israeli government has said that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet US President Donald Trump on the 29th of December. Meanwhile, Netanyahu had earlier stated that he will be discussing with Trump the second phase of a US plan to end the war in Gaza later this month. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas came into effect in October. Both sides have repeatedly accused each other of violating the truce, and wide gaps remain on key issues yet to be discussed under Trump's plan to end the war, including Hamas disarmament, the governance of post-war Gaza, and the composition and mandate of an international security force in the enclave. We're now joined by Sasha Machta, a political commentator, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Sasha, for joining us here on the programme. What more can you tell us, and what can we expect from this meeting on the 29th between the US President and the Israeli Prime Minister?
Yeah, this is the fifth meeting that Netanyahu has already had in the United States since Trump has taken power. Of course, this comes in the midst of the moving to phase two and all the issues relating to the disarmament of Hamas. These are most likely going to be the most pressing topics. There are also reports that the US is inching and trying to push Israel into phase two, even though the last remaining body of the murdered hostage is still in Gaza. This is one of the main disagreements right now between the Trump administration and Israeli government and also Israeli public. Israelis fear that if we were to move on to phase two at the moment, then without the return of the last hostage, Rav Gvili, then it might be the last time he's ever have a chance of returning home. So this is one of the main disagreements that's probably going to be discussed to see how we can move to phase two while the last body is not returned. We're going to see conversations on what phase two is going to look like. Of course, Hamas had agreed when they signed the Donald Trump peace plan to voluntarily disarm, but everybody knows that this is not going to happen voluntarily. Hamas knows it. They stated it. So it seems as if Hamas has agreed to some sort of disarmament when they signed the deal, but some sort of disarmament, maybe not giving their defensive weapons, as they call it, or giving it to another Palestinian body entity. So there's not the same agreement that Trump and Israel and definitely the Western backers had in mind. So the question of how to disarm Hamas is going to be the most important issue at the meeting between Trump and Netanyahu. Also, the mandate of the International Stabilization Force. Of course, it got the sort of certificate of approval, the go-ahead, the green light in the UN, National Security Council. So it's just a question of time for this body to enter Gaza. But the question is, who's going to be willing to send soldiers? Of course, Qatar and Turkey are not welcome. Israel has vetted both Qatar and Turkey's presence in Gaza, both rebuilding and in the International Stabilization Force. So we're going to have to see what leverage Trump has over many moderate Arab nations to actually be willing to send in their soldiers, which is understandably a challenge for many if Hamas is not already disarmed. Many of these countries have stated that they do not wish to enter and fight Hamas, rather be a peacekeeping force. So these are the two main points of friction. How are we moving from phase one and phase two if the last hostage is not returned? And who is going to actually enter Gaza and be willing to disarm Hamas?
And of course, the two men meeting, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Donald Trump, of course, wants to be known as a global peacemaker, and with this fragile ceasefire seeming to not grind to a halt, but almost there. How much do both of these men need this to move on, or do they?
Trump, of course, he needs this. This is going to be one of the biggest achievements of his life regarding foreign policy. What he was able to do to return all the living hostages to Israel was something that most analysts and most experts saw impossible. Everyone thought that Hamas would definitely not be willing to give up their greatest asset, which were the hostages, but Trump was able to do that. But beyond that, Trump wants to change the face of the Middle East. And this is a goal that is shared with Netanyahu. These two men, of course, with their large egos and personalities, they have a deep interest, not just for their countries to change the face of the Middle East, but also for their legacies. If Trump was able to reach some sort of regional agreement with Saudi Arabia joining, maybe Syria and Lebanon in some sort of security agreement, this would be, of course, worthy of a Nobel Prize at the least, but also of a legacy for history as the president of peace who changed the Middle East forever. So Trump really wants to get this done. He's already done the impossible and bring the hostages home. Now is a question of how is he actually going to turn this achievement into a negotiation, into an agreed deal that is going to both remove Hamas from power and also seek peace with the neighbors and Israel and build a coalition against Iran. So that's on Trump's side. Netanyahu, as you probably know, there are elections coming up. So this would be significant if you were able to get Hamas to disarm without sending Israeli troops, which have already spent so much time, 2 years fighting a brutal enemy in Gaza under the worst conditions. If you were able to get this done without having to send and sacrifice a single soldier, that would be
Yes.
a tremendous achievement on his behalf. So the two men have an interest in getting this done, but of course Israel has a deeper interest in a commitment to their people so that October 7th can't happen again, but also that the last remaining hostage comes home, because if it's not now, then it might never be a chance to return this last body. So these are the
Yes.
main points that are going to be discussed and the main interests behind the meeting for these two strong men.
Yes, Sashta Machta, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the